right? Right. So this week we are focusing on how to create the data flow diagrams, right? Data flow diagrams. Strongly urging you to please read the notes. So these notes are very important. Now, from this week onwards, guys, you need to focus on test 2, right? There's another test coming on week 12, right? Week 12 or week 13. We'll do it maybe perhaps in week 13. So these notes from this week onwards, it's very important, okay? So I have some bunch of notes there, so just read this. Now these are the symbols we need to use to create our models, data flow diagrams for your subsystem. Now make sure that you follow these symbols. Now probably the thing is there may be little exception. Actually, some of these symbols are probably not visible in the diagrams.net program. Remember that the program we are using diagrams.net, or what do you call that, draw.io, right? Earlier they called it as draw.io, but now they have changed their name, diagram.net. So you may not get exact symbols, but we try to find out as much as possible whether we can locate these symbols, okay? So these are the 5 symbols we are going to use tomorrow. Right, so this is example of a fragment. Now remember, the fragments very important, because data flow diagrams, when you try to design diagrams, it starts with your event table, right? So you need to make sure that your event table is okay, right? Because if event table is not quite good, I mean, then you may find the faulty diagrams in your data flow diagrams as well. So I gave some example. This is an ERD, typical entity relationship diagram. This is the model, a data model, right? This is important because this data model is important for us to create our data flow diagrams, right? But so in this semester, we are not going to touch any ERD diagrams because we already covered that in last semester. So I'm not going to know how to create these kind of ER diagrams. But these entities are important, right? That is what I wanted to say, okay? In order to create data flow diagrams, okay? And the data flow diagrams we can put in a hierarchy. The highest level data flow diagram, in other words, the bird's eye view of your system can be shown in the context diagram, right? So it's an example. And then the next level is called diagram 0 or event event partition system model, right? Or diagram 0. It's another name. This is an example. Or even you can actually go further down if you think, right, this level 1, this process 1 is a bit complicated, I can break it down further, right? Even you can go further down if you think that, okay, 1.2 is complicated process, we can actually break it down another level, right? So that is how it goes, okay? So I have given some example what we mean by the context diagram, what we mean by the level 0 diagram, what we mean by the data flow fragments. Now the fragments we create for each event that you have identified in the event table, right? Now in your case, in your project, you need to identify 6 events, right? At least one external event, one state event, and one temporal event, right? So together you need to have 6 events. So that is what the requirement is. All right, so I have given you the ideas how to create it. Now let's actually, so there are plenty of notes actually, you can read this. So I just put that for your own benefit. So let's actually practice it now, right? Now we are going to apply this concept to our Acme Garage Lilydale case study. Remember, this is a running case study throughout this semester. So actually, I'm not going to read it. So I take it as you read. Because we have done this in detail in week, I think, 2, when we design our activity diagrams. Remember, I went through and I highlighted the important stuff, right? So, so each week I want you to read it before you come to the class. So I take it as you read, right? Because it will take time to read it again, right? So this week what we need to do is they ask us to produce the context diagram and level 0 diagram or level 0 data flow diagram for the Acme garage system, right? So you can actually imagine this is a subsystem you are building, okay? And then we need to pick up a one process in a level 0 DFD, and we need to develop a level 1 diagram, okay? So one level 1 diagram. So I need to break it down into a further one level. Right. So the first thing first. Now the starting point to develop all these data flow diagram is your event table. Now let's go. Now remember the event table we have created last week. So we need to little modify the event table to fit into the data flow kind of domain. Okay. So let's go back. I think I have saved my event table. I may need to do a little bit of modification. So let me open it. Remember we have done this in an Excel sheet last week. So we have actually identified, so this is the structure for the event table. I have created this event table. Maybe I may need to change this little bit. So what I will do in this case, I'll actually copy this event table to another page, right? Okay, so I'll take it to another page. Let me copy this. I may need to change it little bit because so I'll take it to another page, paste it. So first I will do a little bit of this adjustment because I want to visually see properly. So I just make it little adjustment like this. Okay, now let's go through. Now I'm sometimes I may combine some of these events to form the better event, to reflect the better event, right? Right. So the first use case or first event we have identified customer makes an inquiry to fixing a vehicle or the cars. So that event. So we have the managed car service inquiry. Use case, probably I may keep it as is because it looks like a single event, possibly. So I'll keep this event as is, right? So you can see we are sending two responses from this use case back to the customer, right? So customer is the one who is initiating it. Okay, so I'll keep it as is. Okay. And then we have the fixed car. So the customer is triggering. So agrees to fix the car. So customer is the source. Fixing the car, that is the use case. Then the actually I may actually change this little bit later on. Maybe we can actually change it here. So I may add insert another row. Now we are sending the complete notification. Here I may actually may need before we send the complete notification, we may actually send the customer kind of an agreement, isn't it? Right? So he will sign it and send it back the agreement, and then we send the complete notification, right? So therefore, I may actually change this to reflect it, right? So I may change, I may add actual one more. Let me actually delete this one. So let's say, so let me actually write, okay, written agreement or agreement. goes to the customer, and then fixed notification or fixed notification goes to the customer as well, right? So that is that use case actually handle these two responses. So I just leave it as is. So managed car service, fixed car. Okay, so what else we need? Okay, so I have a now customer wants to pay the bills, right? So I have one use case here, process customer payments. Okay, I will leave this as is, right? I leave this one as is, okay, because we need to process. And then the supplier payments, right? Now remember the supply payments, when you buy the parts from the supplier, we need to pay it. So the process supply payment, I will leave this as is, okay? Or maybe I may put these two into a process, saying, okay, uh, I may I will put it into one process saying, okay, this is actually organize the payments, right? Organize the payments, right? Rather than having two use cases. So I may actually uh, uh, reduce it. I mean, sorry, I may maybe uh, break it in the way, level one later on, right? But at this level, maybe the bird's eye level, I may change. I may use it. I may keep it as a one single process. Okay, so I may actually use a name called use case name called maybe organize payments. So I just combine these two use cases. Okay, to form a mega use case, a big use case. Right. So I have now three external um, events and three external or three use cases to handle this um, bunch of external events. And then we have temporal events. Now here in this case you can see um, um, in this case we have again we are generating reports, right? Generate monthly report and the weekly report. Maybe I may combine these two use cases to form a mega use case called a generate reports. Okay, so let me combine these two. So I just merge this actually. I just merge this. I just put okay. Generate reports. Reports. Okay. And then send the overdue customer payment notification. It is handled by the customer payment process. Actually, the customer payment process now we don't have, right? Because we have merged it into this use case, right? So what I will do in this case, I just write the same use case name here, organize payments, right? Organized payment. So I just color coded it because it's easier for me to uh, see how they link, how these items are linked to each as the same use case. Okay. And then again here the process of supply payments. Again it comes under the organized payments. So I actually I actually color code it with the orange color, and then I change this name to organized payment. Right. So you can see there are a bunch of this organized payment looks like actually a very big complicated use case now, right? So actually we can break it down into a further smaller level later on. Okay? But at this level, I'll keep it as this. And then we have a state events generate the code. So I'll leave it as is, or maybe generate code. We can actually so this is actually customers, right? Customers. Maybe we can let's see whether we can manage somewhere here. No, this is inquiries. We can't put that in there because this is a separate one. Okay, so can I put it inside the fixed car? Probably I may not. I won't actually do that. Or maybe I can give a different name for this. So I may give okay, rather than generate code, I will say okay, organize car service. Organize car service. Okay. So I just name it like that. Okay. And then the final one is the fulfill orders or fulfill stocks. Actually, I will just write fulfill orders rather than fulfill stocks. That's something yeah. All right. So altogether, how many use cases now we have? One here, two, three, four. This is 4, 5, and 6, right? So we got now 6 use cases, right? 6 mega use cases, right? So now this is the event table. Now let me actually name this tab. This is week 6. So I know exactly, okay, I need to proceed with the week 6 one. So this is week 5. All right, so this is actually the stepping stone for me to now develop DFT diagrams. Okay, right. So the next thing is now I have finalized my event table. So what we can do is now I can go to diagrams.net, right? Diagrams.net. Actually, you can download that software. It's a freeware. You can download it. I actually don't download. I usually do it online, right? I started. Okay, let's come to a right. Right. So the notations, right? Now the first thing first. So we need to find out what are the notations we need to use. Now you can see here the notations we are using here is right. So these are the 5 notations, right? So let's go to our side. So the left hand side you can see different notations like general, miscellaneous, advanced, etc., etc. Actually, if you go to this more tab, right, you will get this interface. What you can do is just go there and click the data flow diagram. I think by default it is unclick. You just click it, right? And then just press that button, and then it will come to here, right? and then you can go to the data flow diagrams. But you can see there these notations are not there, right? But it's okay. Let's take the styles we have in this interface because we need to manage it. So let's actually think about now. This is called the process, right? So let's actually identify these symbols. So this is the process. So this is equivalent to probably this symbol, right? But again, the problem is this one and that one, right? So there are two look like the same thing. Or maybe what is this? Or maybe what we can do is now they call it as entity, but we don't. I don't want to take it. Or maybe what you can do is you can go to the general, right? Go to the general and let me delete this one. Let's take the rounded rectangle as a process, right? Because it has a right. Let's take the rounded rectangle as a process, and then a normal rectangle as external agent, right? So that's the external agent. See this external agent, rounded one, and then sorry, a normal rectangle. This is a rounded rectangle. So we'll take the process to this symbol and external agent for this. And then again we have the connectors in the general, so we can actually stick with that connectors so very easily. So let me keep that connector there. So that is the data flow, and then we need to find out the rest. So this is the entity, or in other words data store. I think we have a maybe you can use one of these. Maybe we can actually stick with this one. That's okay. So this is the data store. Okay. So let's take this one, or either you can take this one as well, but okay, let's for the time being let's take this one. This is a simple, right? So let's take this. And what else we need? This is with now this is a real-time link. Let's see whether we have the real-time link. I don't think we have the real-time link here, or maybe we have to see whether we can make it as a zigzag kind of double-headed arrow. Let's see whether we can do that in here. Maybe somewhere here. No. Like this, and so we need the both arrows in both directions. So yeah, something like this, right? So you can actually see whether you can just play with this one and see whether you can, get something equivalent to like this, right? Not quite sure how to take this from there, but it's okay. So let's actually stick with these symbols to construct our data flow diagram. Right? So first we need to clarify this. Okay, that is the second step, right? So first step we did this one. Second step we need to clarify the symbols, right? So it's more equivalent to this. And now we need to construct our data flow diagram, right? So what they ask us to do, so let's go to the assignment, not the assignment, sorry, tutorial. So let's see. So we need to construct a level 0 diagram and the context diagram, and then pick up one process in a level 0 and develop the level 1 RDFD, right? So in order to develop level 0 diagram, we need to actually first construct data flow fragments, right? That is actually required. So what do you mean by data flow fragment? That means we need to create a fragment for each of these rows, right? So one fragment for one row. in other words, one fragment for each use case. Okay, so since we have 6 use cases, we need to create 6 fragments, right? So let's actually create that first. Okay, so that's why my first okay, let's okay, so what I will do, so what I do is I'll actually take time for me to use this. So I'll, for the time being, I'll actually use some other program like Windows Paint. So please make sure you use this. Okay, so I use something else because I need to do it. um, so I'll do a sketch diagram using Windows Paint. Okay, right. So let's actually take the first one. So first one is let's say, so let's take the first fragment, this one. Okay, manage car service inquiries. So that is the first fragment. Okay, the other important thing that we need to actually think about is when you think, when you take these use cases, we need to think about what are the entities. Now what I will do is I'll create another column here to record entities. Entities we require to process each use case. Okay. Okay. So this is my next column. So I'll make it a bit nice. Let me make it put the borders. Right. So if you think about this, manage car service inquiries. So inquiries coming from the customer, right? So definitely we need to have an entity for customer. Yeah. That means we need to have that table, right? Otherwise it's not make any sense, right? Um, so we need to have customer, right? And then what else we need? Customer need to be there. And then you can see we check the payment histories of the customer and then respond whether we have any outstanding payment. We are sending back that outstanding payment to the customer. Okay, say, hey, you need to pay our earlier service, you haven't paid it. So the outstanding payment can be sent to them, right? So so we need to have another actually entity for that, right? Customer records only the customer detail, right? Maybe we need another entity called, say, custom invoice, right? Customer invoice entity. So it has all the historical details about the invoices we send to the customer, right? So these are the two probably um, entities we require to process this information by using this use case, right? So let's actually build that. So sorry, my handwriting is, I'm using a mouse. This is my fragment number 1. Okay. So let me actually try my best to sorry, this is my process 1. Okay, what is the name of that process or use case? Manage car service inquiries. Okay, so I just write it here. Okay, so write it here. Manage car service inquiry. So I just put in INK. So that is my first process, right? Okay, so I need now external agent, right? The custom is the one who is sending that triggering that event, right? So definitely I need that external agent. So actually I have this, take this on you. So I just, so this is my customer. Yeah. Right. So what is the trigger? So what triggers this process? Car service inquiry. Right. Yeah. So inquiry comes in, right? So so let me write that trigger. So that is actually the data flow. That is the flow of data that triggers this process. Yeah. So that trigger, right? So that trigger is the process. So I just write car service inquiry. Now remember, uh, you need to use one verb, one verb, one noun to name this process, verb and noun, and then usually data flows has to be in the noun form. Okay. So these are the small tips you need to actually. These are the things that we use in normally very often in the industry. Right. So this is the trigger. So car service inquiry comes in. So in order to process now, what will happen once the inquiry comes in? Now remember, these receptionists, they are the one who actually inside this process, right? They are representing these processes. What they do, uh, uh, what they do is they will check whether they have outstanding payment. Right? How do they do that? They need to access these two entities, right? So these two entities. I just write the entities now. Sorry, this is my entity 1. This is my entity 2. Right, so I just write this is the customer and this is the customer invoice. So right, customer invoice. So what we need to do is we need to read it from these two files. Read, so that means the data going backward to this process, right? Read, and then we need to respond. We process it, we respond to the customer. What is the response? Response is there. Service history information and payment status confirmation, right? Payment status confirmation. So we need responses, one going back and second one going back. Okay, service history information. Let me write it down here. Service history info, and the second one is payment status confirmation. Payment status, right? So that's enough actually. Payment status, yeah, right. So did I capture everything in this case? Yeah. Yes. So I capture the trigger. I capture the source. Yeah. I capture the use case. Yes, this is the use case. I capture these two responses. Yes, responses going back. Destination is the custom. Yes, this is the destination. And the entities are two entities, right? Sorry, Chingsen, do you have any questions? Sorry, I just saw because I'm just focusing on trigger. No, trigger is not the zigzag line. Trigger is this is the triggers. Trigger we usually normally use the normal data flow line here. This is the data flow. This is the trigger. Zigzag line is for the real time link. What do you mean by the real time? For example, if the customer paid by the credit card, we need to see whether the credit card is a valid, etc., etc., by connecting it to the bank, right? So that is the real time link. Yeah, that's the real time link. That is a exact link, right? Right. So in this case, the trigger is the inquiry. It's not the zigzag. It's not the real time. It's the inquiry that triggers this process, right? So actually, the data flow triggers this process. When the customer gives their information, and he may come to a inquiry and say, okay, my name is this and that, and my car registration number is this and that. Now these are the data, right? These are the data. It triggers this process. All right, got it? Yeah. So it's quite different actually. Zigzag is something we wanted to check um, um, instantly with something with the bank or external agent, external entity to confirm. Okay. All right. So yeah. So this is the first fragment actually. We done the first fragment. Yeah. Is it clear, guys? Are you all clear about the first fragment now? Yeah. Tell me. Give me your feedback. Is it clear the first fragment? Okay. So now we can jump to the second fragment if it is clear. Do you need to re-explain to me again, to you again, or are you okay? May I know? Spencer, Ryan, Rory, Stuart, Precious, Noah, Chigsen. Are you all clear? Are you all clear with the first fragment? Yeah. Okay. Right. So now we can actually go to the. I know it's a little boring sometimes, but this is how we actually do in practice also in the industry when we go. So we need to be very careful, go very slowly. So Chingsen, how can you get the customer and customer invoice in entity? Okay, how can I get it? I need to assume it. I make an assumption, right? The assumption is in order to process this information. Now see these triggers, right? Triggers are the information comes in, right? Okay, and then some information when you think about information flows in and information flows out, you need to guess what kind of entities we require to process this, to provide this information, right? So here I am assuming we need to have the customer, right? The customer entity may record all the customer details, his vehicles, etc., etc., and probably the customer invoices. Yeah, custom invoice. So if I actually draw an entity relationship diagram, actually it comes from the ERD diagram, right? So we have the customer entity, and we may have a custom invoice entity, right? This is customer. So one customer can have many custom invoices, something like this, right? So we actually model this first. We model this first before we actually do this, but we are not going through this direction because I assume you have good knowledge now, right? I assume that you have good knowledge on creating entity relationship diagram because we have done so many ERDs in stage 1. Remember stage 1 in database unit? Yeah. So I need not to actually redo this again. So that is that I made an assumption that you can reasonably guess what entities we need. So this is a guess. This is a guess. So I'm not going to, you know, argue with anyone because you may come up with another 2 types of entities, but it has to have a logical relationship when you select entities. Okay. For example, you can't take the customer entity and the supplier entity in this case, so it's actually not make any sense, right? It makes sense, Christian? Chingsen? Yeah. Okay. So I'm guessing you already have that knowledge, okay? ERD knowledge. So I'm not going to touch that one because we covered that in remember those days when I teach this database class, I told you the knowledge is very important in the latest other subjects. Remember that? I think I have mentioned that in one of my classes last semester. Okay. All right. So we completed that. Now we can actually come to the second one. Let's take this one, fixed car, right? So let's take the second one. This is my second one. I guess so. I just draw another fragment. I just put number 2. So this time fixed car. Fixed car. Okay, do we have external agent in there? Yep, customer. So let me draw that external agent. Okay, this is my customer. So let me name that as a customer. Okay. Right, now let's go through this. Right, actually, now what we need to do now, can you see there is a trigger coming in. Customer now agrees to fix the car. He confirms accept the quotation, right? The quotation confirmation comes in. Now remember we have put another state event somewhere here. We generate car service quotation, right? Remember here. Right now, maybe I may put that later on. So let's let leave it as is because we'll come to that later on. So that is where we generate the car service quotation, right? Then the car service quotation goes to the customer. He accepts it and send the acceptance here, right? Acceptance here. So it comes to this use case, right? So let's actually draw that one first, right? So here now I am getting quotation confirmation. So I just took accepted quote. So accepted quote, that is the information flow, right? So it comes in. And then we respond back to the customer, the agreement, right? And then once the car has been fixed, we send the fix notification, right? So that is what this use case is going to handle, right? So let's actually record that to information. So agreement goes back to the customer, and then we send a fix notification, right? The two responses. So agreement and fix notification. Fix notification, right? So it goes back to customer. Now we need to think about, right, like what I did earlier. Now we need to think about, okay, what I need, what entities I need to process this information. Okay, right. So probably I need again the customer, isn't it? So let me actually record it here. So I need the customer account or customer entity, right? And also I need the customer invoice entity because when the agreement has been accepted, I need to place, okay, this is what we need to also put a kind of open the invoice account there, okay? And then probably now remember in the case study, if you have read the case study, it says we need to accumulate the costs for the car as well, or maybe we can that cost has to be accumulated somewhere, right? Maybe we can say that entity as car service entity. So that is where we accumulate the cost of our service, right? So basically, I'll take three entities in this case: customer entity, customer invoice entity, and the car service entity. Okay, right. So let's take back our model, and then let's record these three entities first. So let's record these three entities first. 1, 2. Sorry, it's not so good. My mouse is this is third one. So let's name this. This is customer. Customer invoice. So ICE and car service. Car service, yeah. Now the same entity, right? Now here you can see the custom entity. This is custom, is the same entity, right? So same entity used by this use case as well as this use case, right? But here we have an additional one called car service. Okay. Right. So so in order to process this, so when the accepted code comes in, we may read the customer, right? We may read the customer, and then we may write an entry into the customer account, or sorry, custom invoice account, right? And then we can write back all the accumulated costs to the car service, right? When car service has been finalized, we can actually read read it from the entity, and okay, then we send a fixed notification back to the customer. Okay, your car has been fixed, right? So read, write, read, write. Okay. Okay. Right. So does it make sense now? The second fragment, guys. Does it make sense now? The second one. That's the second one here. Yeah. Right. Does the custom entity contain the customer details? Yeah. Custom entity. Now, custom entity may have custom ID number, first name, last name, the vehicle details, etc., etc. Right? Or maybe you can have another entity called vehicle entity. Right? One customer can have many vehicles, right? So I don't want to go on to that part because it's too complicated for you guys. So so if you can show the minimum information, that's fine, right? If you go for a real life entity ER diagram, then you need, right, customer vehicles, invoices, right? So there are so many, right? So you don't need to go in that direction. Can you explain the last two entity? Okay, can you explain last two entity means these two? This is what we mean by this. Right, okay. Now, if I think about customer, now let me actually go through. So what are the information normally contained in the custom entity? Now let's go to another tab. So if I think about custom entity, right? This is custom. What are the row columns I need to have? Custom ID, right? customer ID column. Then I may have customer name, address, vehicle radio number, right? So these are the information usually it contains, right? And then the next entity, say custom invoice, let's say custom invoice. It may contain the information like, okay, custom ID, invoice date, maybe invoice amount, so I just put AND, invoice amount. So when the customer agrees, accept the code, we just update, okay, custom ID, invoice date, blah blah, invoice amount 0, right? We just put a kind of and then because at the moment it has been amounted to 0, right? And then the vehicle has been fixed, right? When the vehicle has been fixed, so this car service one maybe contain these kind of information, right? Custom car service. So they may have kind of like maybe custom ID, invoice ID. So we don't have invoice ID here. Okay, just put invoice date. Maybe pay accumulated cost. So total cost for that particular vehicle, right? So these are the typical normal columns you will find in each of these entities, right? So what we do is when the customer accept the code, we read from the customer to verification. Okay, this is custom ID, blah blah blah, and then we put a entry, right? Custom ID, say 0001, this date. So you can put whatever the date, 6666, and invoice amount is 0 at the moment, right? So when we finish, so that means 001, invoice date, probably maybe another date, right? So we accumulated cost is say $200, and then what we can do is 200. We updated here, okay, 200 is the invoice, or maybe you can put not 200, sorry, 300, because we have profit margin as well, right? So this is the cost, and this is the invoice, right? So $100 profit, right? So we can say the invoice amount is this much. Okay, so that is what why we write it, and then we read it, and then we write it to custom invoice. Okay, so we are showing that logic there. Okay, make sense, Ching said? Does it make sense? Yeah, customary, yeah. Everybody, this makes sense because I did. You know, this logic has to be there, right? Why I read, why I write. Okay, you can't just simply just put arrows and say, this is this test. Okay, so you need to have a logic, right? That's what I need to point it. Right. So we completed the second one. Because it takes time actually, guys. It takes time because that's why. And then we can go to the third one, right? The third one, is you can see the third one is little bit. You need to be very very careful, because why? You can see the third process has expanded into several places, right? Because we have squeezed it. We put a lot of information in the third process, right? So that we be careful. Let's take actually organized customer, or sorry, organized payment use case now. The third one, okay, let's take it here, somewhere here. So let me draw the process first. 3, organize payment. Okay, organize payment. So I just, sorry, my it's like this. So okay, now let me draw. Right now, the organized payment. How many external agents I need? Right now, let's go through this. Right now, here you can see there are 2 external agents, right? Customer and the supplier. So in this case, system also is triggering something. Yeah, system triggers something because the notices. Because can you see the overdue when the due dates passed, we need to system need to generate some kind of triggers temporal. That is what we mean by the temporal event, right? So that means we need to have another external agent um, for the trigger, right? So one for the customer, one for the supplier, and then one for that temporal event, because we are assuming that temporal is triggered by somewhere else, some maybe calendar system, right? Calendar system triggers something in our process. Okay, right, now let's actually name these things first. First thing first, because this is, otherwise we will make our life may be a bit difficult later on. So let's make it first customer. This is customer, and this is the supplier, and the third one. Let me actually. This one is the calendar. Let me make it as a calendar. Okay, calendar. Okay, can I actually? Oh, can I make it smaller? Oops, what happened to this? Sorry guys, I just need to delete this one, and I think my space is not enough. So let me actually draw it somewhere here. So this is the calendar. Right, and okay. So let's now think about what are the entities, right? Right, so here you can see we definitely need, now this is regarding the payments, right? So payment means we need to take the we need to verify with the customer, which customer, and then we need to take the customer invoice. So customer invoice, right? And then we need the supply details as well, right? So I just have same two entities, like customer for the suppliers, supplier and supply invoice. Okay, supply invoice. Right, so that is about that. And do we need an entity for the these triggers? No. For the temporal event, no, right? So we don't need that actually, because that's the trigger, right? I think that's well, I think that's enough, right? That's enough. For the time being, that's enough. Maybe later on, once we populate and draw the diagram for the others, probably we need to come back and change. We need to add some entities there, right? For the time being, it's okay. Okay. Right. So let's draw the entities first. So we need custom entity, custom invoice entity, and then the supply entity and supply invoice entity. So 4. Right. So just let's name it customer, then custom invoice, and then the supplier, and then supply invoice. Okay. Right. So let's now think about, okay, now what we need, now we need to be a bit careful. So we need to now go back and then add the data flows. Now let's start with here. Right, so customer wants to pay the bill. Right now here, now where we are now, did we send right now we have missed one thing. Right now, see, okay, okay, we miss one thing. Now you can see a kind of a problem here. You can see here now, according to this use case, customer paying for the invoice, isn't it? Payment details comes in from the customer to this process, right? But here earlier we haven't actually sent the invoice to the customer, right? Now what we can do now, see, when you do that, you can see some kind of misfits, right? So what we can do is we can go back and add that to somewhere here, right? Because when the car has been fixed, you need to send fixed notification plus the invoice as well, right? So let me add that part there. Okay, custom invoice. Right, so now I have add one more, so that means I need to now add that data flow from this process to customer. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so going back from process to the customer, that's a custom invoice. Custom invoice. Yeah, so we added that. Okay, now here we are receiving the payment from the customer, right? Okay, so now we can add that here. Okay, so let's add that. Payment details come from there. So let me make it as customer payment detail because so payment details, and then yeah, so that's there, and then we are sending the supplier the invoices back to the supplier, right? No, sorry, here we are receiving the supply invoices from the supplier, right? When we order some products, they are sending us the invoice, right? This is supply invoice. So I need to add one inflow from here. Supply invoice. Right, so done that. Right, so the payment confirmation going back from this process, and payment details going back to the supplier as well. Right, so let's add these two. So that means we need to go give the customer the payment confirmation, right? And then we are giving back to the supplier payment details. Maybe we can send a check or something, yeah. Okay. So just put supply payment because we have the customer payment as well. So supply payment, right? Right. So I think we handle all these stuff in this use case. Um, um, right. Now let's think about. So I need to do very quickly because we have 1 more minute to go. Now we need to think about how we going to connect. Right. So the right. So I need to read from the customer definitely, right, to verify whether from which customer we are getting these payment details, right? And then I need to write back the custom invoice. I need to update the custom invoice file, right? So going back, at the same time, I need to read it from the supplier and then update the supply invoice file, right? So read, write, read, write, or read, update, read, update. Yeah, right. So that is actually about this use case. Use case number 3.